Welcome to Rauta, I am Jerry and here I am talking to you about black metal, this time from Romania. That is a country that is often overlooked when it comes to extreme metals as versus the bigger countries more in the Western Europe or of course the Nordic countries. However, Romania is not without its bands, and one of the cases here today is a band from the 90s. This one is Insepultus with their debut album Deadly Gleams of Blood, Steel and Fire. That is a very tempting title, to be honest, something that already kind of, gives the feeling of power, strength, and all that stuff. Almost like putting you into the game of death metal and black metal colliding. Curiously enough, that's exactly what this is to talk about. Maybe this is because I already know the music before talking about the title, but nonetheless, here it is. As you can see, this one comes with a nice slipcase version. If I got the information correctly, this one is a limited edition, but there should be more of these more regular type of CDs out there for you. So this comes with 7 tracks, about 29 minutes, and the style is indeed a combination of death and black metal. Mind you, the focus is more definitely on the black metal side of things, but I would be lying if I wouldn't, including the points about death metal here. Maybe it's not so dominating, but it's worth mentioning because, for example, the vocal parts are combined of both these kind of raspy, throaty black metal vocals as well as a little bit growliness in the mix. That is also accompanied with the production on the album, which is definitely something that you could give you a little bit of a feeling from the both of best worlds. Now, as the theme might suggest, with the cover and the inlay image, there are also spoken parts which really take you into a world of war. Not necessarily too modern war, but obviously we are not talking about some ancient wars in, Greek or Rome or all that stuff. We're still talking about modern warfare where bombs are being dropped and rifles are being shot. Things like that. And of course this creates quite a dark, grim world with death and suffering kind of a feeling to this one. So you could really say this is in a way a kind of a war metal thing, but not the same way as what your typical war metal band is. Well, unfortunately for this video the camera isn't really zooming to the liner notes too much. Let's just slide it away from that and focus on what we have here. Now, mind you, the band representative, one could say the main member, I guess the very same person who is here in the photo of what I just showed you, a little bit older guy by now, mentioned that this information here on Metal Archive site is highly outdated, complaining even that some of the information here is not correct. I promised to help to update the information when necessary. So mind you, when you're looking at this information page, by the time this review gets out, it might look a little bit different. You also already can see my modification here because I actually fixed one of the social media links for the band. But for the rest of the stuff like members list here or some of the information about the release, maybe we will see updated information of that later on. But first and foremost, what is worth mentioning here that it shows that this band started in already late 90s. However, before there was an album or anything like that, the band went on hiatus, effectively splitting up and all that stuff, only to resurface some 20 years later. Now, if that sounds somewhat weird, I can tell you it's not that actually uncommon with a lot of bands out there for managing for a lot of time, for a period of time, even decades. My own band, very same thing. The other band was on hiatus 13 years. The other bands were almost 20 years. So I'm talking about my own first-hand experience here. And when I'm doing these reviews, actually there are quite many of bands that have started already like late 90s or early 2000s. Oh, to vanish for 10 or 20 years, then to come back. There are even bands that started in the 80s and then just resurfacing 2000s. So this story is not that uncommon, even it might sound weird that you already started like 25 years ago, but now 2023 is the year when you're doing your first album. Be it as it may, the album is actually very nicely made and there are no big complaints whatsoever about the songwriting production, etc. The thing here is, this is definitely traveling to the dark territories in the world of extreme metal. That is saying it's mostly more like a modern take of second wave black metal. There are parts where it just sounds like kind of a second wave black metal, but way more modern sound. And of course the sound is more thicker in a way, so not like grim, thin, some weak ass, low budget production like it was so many bands back in the early 90s with extreme metal, particularly in black metal. Now death metal bands always had more thicker and more powerful sound, and of course this is where Insepultus kind of puts you in the middle of these things. So kind of taking things from the black metal scene, kind of from the death metal scene, and combining them nicely. However, like I said, the music, the songwriting is mostly on the black metal side of things. And that's where it gets kind of interesting because the focus is on war. And of course, the songwriting, a lot of riffs, they are definitely more on the black metal side of things. But when you have the growly vocals, when you have the certain emphasis with the details and whatnot on the death metal thing, that's where it gets kind of a tricky. But what matters is the result is interesting. It doesn't really sound like most of the bands out there, not least the black death metal bands, because a lot of them sound different. However, this is not one of the kind of unique, weird, avant-garde-ish thing, but kind of a, in a way, rather ordinary in the world of black and death metal. So I'm saying it's not too common, but you will find a lot of common similarities with bands coming from black and death or black death territory. Now, there are lots of spoken parts, and when I say lot, I don't mean that they're every track, but they're kind of dominating, like telling a story. For some people, it might be a little bit too much, because it's almost like listening to a podcast or audiobook on top of, extreme metal recording. It's kind of an interesting choice, and in some way it's fascinating, but more and more spins you give it to that, you're kind of like hoping it would be shorter and more focused on the vocals. Why? Because you're not exactly wanting to listen to any kind of a podcast or e-book or whatever, instead of, listening to vocals being, sung on the top of songs and all that stuff. So there is that. It's kind of a best of both worlds kind of solution. On the other hand, yes. On the other hand, no. So I, of course, leave it to individual people deciding whether or not they like the decision. Overall, I would say vocals are good. Not the best in the pile, but good. Same could be said about production. It's not like super polished, super powerful, super big band budget without sounding like too overly produced, but it's good. I'm saying this is a very good balance for this kind of stuff. It's not actually grim or raw in the sense, but then again it supports the music way better than typical black metal thin sounding lo-fi production would. So there's that. And on the top of the things in the last slide in the list, is that this album runs for only 28 minutes and then some. For some people it sounds like an EP in a world of full-length albums. I'm saying it's a kind of a fortunate thing because now it doesn't really bore you. By the time you're done with the album, you're like, hey, I could keep another spin because, it's already gone. So it kind of supports the idea that you don't get bored. You don't feel like, what the hell, this album is running and running and running, like a rambling one, like a broken record. Like there are so many albums doing that. So this is kind of a good, but it feels a little bit short, like almost like MCD, but not exactly an album. So there it is. I would say overall pretty good of an album. Could be better, could be catchier, could be more memorable, but a lot of things are done right and I think that matters. So give this one a go. You will find links provided in the description box and decide for yourself whether or not this is worth purchasing, whether it's worth adding to your own collection in the physical format. Like I said, this slipcase version is limited edition. Here it is, 100 copies, and I think most of them are already sold. But if you're quick enough, you might get it because this was released in 15th of December 2023, so only a month ago or so. Now, off you go, check it out, and I hope you enjoy it. Take care, bye-bye.